Welcome to the Wisdom Embassy, a place where purpose is awakened, identity is restored, and destiny begins to make sense. If you have ever felt like you were created for more, if you have ever looked at your life and quietly asked, why am I really here? If deep inside you there is a hunger that success, money, or approval could never satisfy, then you are not here by accident. This channel exists for thinkers, believers, leaders, dreamers, and warriors of faith who refuse to live an ordinary life. Here, we do not chase motivation that fades tomorrow. We pursue wisdom that transforms a lifetime. Every message shared in this space is designed to awaken the greatness already placed inside you, to help you rediscover your assignment, renew your mind, and walk boldly in the life you were created to live. The Wisdom Embassy is more than a YouTube channel. It is a spiritual environment. An embassy represents a kingdom operating in a foreign land, and this platform serves as a place where kingdom principles meet everyday life. Here you will learn how to master your mindset, protect your purpose, develop leadership, strengthen discipline, and align your daily decisions with divine intention. Many people live busy lives but never discover their true calling. They work hard yet feel empty. They succeed publicly but struggle privately. They compare themselves to others and slowly lose sight of who they were meant to become. This channel exists to remind you that your life carries meaning, your gifts carry responsibility, and your existence carries purpose. Every message you hear here is meant to challenge you, not just inspire you. Inspiration excites emotions, but wisdom changes direction. You will be encouraged to think differently, live intentionally, and take ownership of your personal growth. Because transformation begins the moment you stop waiting for permission and start embracing responsibility for your life. Here, we believe that purpose is not discovered by accident. It is revealed through discipline, clarity, and spiritual awareness. You were not designed merely to survive circumstances. You were designed to influence environments. Your voice matters. Your calling matters. Your time on earth matters. So, whether you are rebuilding your faith, searching for clarity, overcoming confusion, or preparing for a new season of life, you have found a community that walks this journey with you. This is a place where hearts are strengthened, minds are renewed, and vision is restored. Take a deep breath. Slow down for a moment. Allow yourself to listen, reflect, and grow. Because sometimes one message can shift your perspective, and one revelation can change the entire direction of your life. There is a quiet battle happening in the hearts of many people today. It is not a battle against enemies outside, but a struggle within the mind and spirit. Many believers wake up every morning exhausted, not because life is too hard, but because they are carrying responsibilities that were never assigned to them. They are emotionally drained watching other people's lives, comparing their progress, judging their journeys, and interfering in matters that do not belong to their calling. The greatest distraction from purpose is not failure but misplaced attention. When your eyes are fixed on everyone else, you slowly lose sight of the assignment placed inside your own soul. You were not created to manage the destiny of others. You were created to steward the life entrusted to you. Scripture reminds us in Proverbs 4:25 that we must let our eyes look straight ahead and fix our gaze directly before us. That instruction is spiritual wisdom because attention determines direction. Wherever your focus goes, your life follows. Many people pray for clarity while constantly looking sideways. You cannot discover purpose while monitoring someone else's journey. The heart becomes restless when it abandons its own lane. There are people who spend years criticizing others yet never build anything themselves. They analyze another person's marriage, another person's career, another person's ministry, another person's mistakes. But the kingdom principle is simple: every individual will give an account for their own stewardship. Romans 14:12 declares that each of us will give an account of ourselves, not of our neighbor, not of our friend, not of our pastor, of ourselves. This truth should liberate you. You are not responsible for living anyone else's life. You are responsible for cultivating what has been placed in your hands. Many frustrations come from comparing seasons. You look at someone succeeding and assume you are behind. You see another person celebrated and wonder why your efforts remain unseen. Yet Ecclesiastes 3:1 teaches that there is a season for everything and a time for every purpose under heaven. Purpose unfolds in timing, not competition. When you mind your own business, you begin to respect divine timing. You stop rushing growth that requires preparation. You stop envying fruit that grew from years of unseen discipline. There is danger in constantly inserting yourself into matters that do not concern your calling. It steals peace. It breeds jealousy. It creates unnecessary emotional burdens. Some people carry anxiety not because their life is difficult, but because they are mentally involved in 10 other lives at once. Social comparison has become a modern form of spiritual distraction. Instead of cultivating inner character, many people cultivate opinions about others. But purpose demands concentration. A seed cannot grow if it is constantly uprooted to examine another field. The Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians 4:11, to aspire to live quietly, mind your own affairs and work with your hands. That instruction is powerful. Quiet living does not mean insignificant living. It means focused living. It means developing discipline without the need for constant validation. A person who understands purpose does not need to announce progress every day. Growth happens in silence before it appears in public. You must understand that interference often comes from insecurity. When individuals feel uncertain about their own direction, they attempt to control or critique others. It temporarily distracts them from confronting their own potential. But spiritual maturity requires self-examination. 2 Corinthians 13:5 encourages believers to examine themselves to see whether they are in the faith. Self-examination produces transformation, while comparison produces frustration. Imagine a farmer who abandons his own land every morning to inspect his neighbor's crops. He spends hours analyzing soil conditions across the fence, while weeds grow unattended in his own field. Eventually, harvest season arrives, and he wonders why others reap abundance while his land remains barren. The problem was never opportunity. The problem was misplaced attention. Your life works the same way. Purpose requires cultivation. Prayer must be personal. Discipline must be consistent. Growth must be intentional. Many believers delay destiny because they are overly concerned with public opinion. They fear criticism, so they watch others carefully before making decisions. But Galatians 6:4 teaches each one should test their own work, and then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. Freedom begins when you stop seeking permission from spectators who were never assigned authority over your life. There is also emotional healing in minding your own business. When you release the burden of controlling outcomes in other people's lives, your heart becomes lighter. You learn compassion without interference. You pray without manipulation. You love without possession. Even Scripture reminds us in Proverbs 26:17 that interfering in someone else's quarrel is like grabbing a stray dog by the ears. It leads to unnecessary pain. Wisdom teaches discernment about when to speak and when to step back. Some people believe involvement equals care, but true care respects boundaries. Not every problem requires your voice. Not every conflict requires your presence. Not every situation requires your opinion. Silence can be an act of spiritual maturity. Listening can be a form of leadership. Peace often grows where unnecessary words are removed. When you begin to focus on your own assignment, something remarkable happens. You discover gifts that were hidden beneath distraction. Talents awaken. Creativity returns. Energy increases. Why? Because purpose produces strength. Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who wait upon the Lord renew their strength." Waiting is not passive. It is focused expectation. It is aligning your life with divine intention rather than social pressure. The enemy of purpose rarely attacks through destruction first. It attacks through distraction. If your attention can be divided, your effectiveness becomes weakened. Many believers feel busy yet unfulfilled because activity replaced assignment. Busyness without purpose leads to exhaustion. But alignment with purpose brings peace even during hard work. Consider how often people measure success through visibility. They believe significance requires recognition. Yet many of the most impactful works happen unseen. Roots grow underground before trees rise above ground. Character develops in private before influence appears in public. Matthew 6:6 teaches that prayer happens in secret, and what is done in secret receives reward openly. The kingdom operates through hidden preparation. Minding your own business also protects relationships. Gossip destroys trust. Judgment damages unity. Assumptions create distance between hearts. James 4:11 warns believers not to speak evil against one another, because judgment belongs to the Lord alone. When you release judgment, you create space for grace. You begin to see people with compassion rather than competition. There is a deep emotional peace that comes when you accept your uniqueness. Psalm 139:14 declares that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That means your journey cannot be compared because your design is distinct. Your calling may not look impressive to others, but obedience matters more than applause. You were not sent to imitate another life. You were sent to express a specific purpose that only you can fulfill. Many individuals live trapped in frustration because they attempt to fulfill expectations placed upon them by society, family, or culture. They spend years pursuing careers, identities, or dreams that belong to someone else. Eventually, their spirit becomes weary because the soul recognizes misalignment. True fulfillment begins when you return attention inward and ask what responsibility has been entrusted specifically to you. When you mind your own business, you begin to hear the quiet voice of guidance more clearly. Noise decreases. Confusion fades. Decision-making becomes sharper. Prayer deepens because it becomes personal rather than performative. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us that there are plans designed for hope and a future. But discovering those plans requires intentional focus. Another powerful truth is that growth requires patience with yourself. Many believers extend grace to others yet remain harsh toward their own progress. They criticize themselves constantly while applauding everyone else. But spiritual maturity includes learning to nurture your own development. Philippians 1:6 assures us that the good work begun within us will be carried to completion. That promise invites trust in the process rather than anxiety over comparison. There are moments when stepping back from other people's business feels uncomfortable because involvement has become habitual. Silence may feel unfamiliar. Stillness may feel strange. Yet within stillness, transformation begins. Psalm 46:10 encourages us to be still and know. Stillness restores perspective. It reconnects the heart with purpose rather than distraction. You must also recognize that boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries protect stewardship. Even in ministry, wisdom requires knowing where your responsibility ends. Trying to fix every situation leads to burnout. Carrying every burden weakens effectiveness. Galatians 6:5 teaches that each person should carry their own load. Supporting others does not mean replacing their responsibility. Emotionally, many people struggle because they believe their value comes from being needed. They insert themselves into every situation to feel important. Yet identity is not built on usefulness to others, but on alignment with purpose. When you understand who you are, you no longer chase validation through involvement in unnecessary matters. Imagine waking each morning with clear focus, knowing exactly what deserves your energy. Peace replaces anxiety. Confidence replaces comparison. Gratitude replaces jealousy. That is the power of minding your own business. It is not isolation. It is intentional living. The world constantly invites distraction through endless opinions, news, controversies, and social noise. But purpose demands selective attention. What you consistently think about shapes who you become. Romans 12:2 teaches transformation through renewal of the mind. Renewal happens when attention shifts from external chaos toward internal alignment. Sometimes the hardest discipline is resisting the urge to react. Someone misunderstands you. Someone criticizes your progress. Someone questions your direction. The natural instinct is defense. Yet wisdom often chooses restraint. Proverbs 17:27 says the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint. Restraint protects peace. Silence prevents unnecessary conflict. As you learn to focus inward, you begin to cultivate deeper faith. Faith grows when energy is invested in obedience rather than observation. You start asking different questions, not why others succeed, but what step of obedience is required from you today. That shift transforms life from comparison into calling. There are dreams placed within your heart that cannot grow while your attention remains scattered. The vision entrusted to you requires concentration. Habakkuk 2:2 instructs us to write the vision and make it plain. Clarity comes when distractions are removed. Vision becomes powerful when protected. Many believers underestimate the spiritual strength required to stay in their own lane. It demands humility to accept your process. It requires courage to ignore comparison. It calls for faith to trust unseen progress. Yet this discipline leads to freedom. Freedom from jealousy. Freedom from pressure. Freedom from unnecessary emotional burdens. And as this awareness deepens, something beautiful begins to happen inside the soul. You start realizing that peace was never far away. It was simply hidden beneath layers of distraction and misplaced responsibility. And as you slowly reclaim your attention, reclaim your time, reclaim your thoughts, reclaim your emotional energy, you begin to sense a quiet confidence rising within you, a confidence rooted not in superiority but in alignment. Because when a person finally commits to tending their own field, nurturing their own calling, guarding their own heart, walking faithfully within their own assignment, they step into a rhythm of life that feels both purposeful and deeply human. And in that sacred rhythm, the noise of comparison grows faint, the urge to interfere loses power, and the soul begins to rest while still moving forward with intention and faith and patience and expectation. And you start Recognizing that true spiritual maturity is not proven by how many lives you control, but by how faithfully you steward the one life entrusted to you. And as this realization settles deeper into your spirit, you feel the gentle invitation to keep walking, keep focusing, keep building, keep growing, even when progress feels slow, even when recognition does not come, even when others misunderstand your silence, because the work happening within you is preparing something greater, something steady, something rooted, something that cannot be shaken by public opinion or temporary circumstances. And this inner work continues shaping your character, shaping your discipline, shaping your vision, shaping your courage, until one day you look back and realize that minding your own business was never about withdrawal from the world, but about discovering your place within it and learning how to live with intentional faithfulness every single day. And as you continue walking in that quiet commitment, something begins to change in how you see life itself. Because clarity produces calmness, and calmness produces strength, and strength produces consistency, and consistency is what transforms ordinary believers into individuals who walk with deep spiritual authority without needing recognition from the world around them. Many people spend years searching for peace in external achievements, yet peace is born when the soul aligns with responsibility instead of comparison. When your heart finally accepts that your assignment is sacred, you stop rushing through life, trying to prove worth, and instead, you begin living intentionally, knowing that every step matters. The reason many people feel spiritually exhausted is because they have divided loyalties. Their attention is scattered between their calling and everyone else's expectations. They pray for direction, yet constantly adjust their path based on opinions. James 1:8 teaches that a double-minded person is unstable in all their ways. Stability begins when focus becomes singular. You cannot walk confidently while constantly turning your head to observe how others walk. Faith grows stronger when attention remains fixed on obedience rather than approval. There is a powerful emotional freedom that comes when you release the pressure to understand everyone else's story. Not every situation requires your interpretation. Not every decision made by another person needs your agreement. Some journeys are private classrooms where lessons are taught directly between a person and their creator. Respecting that sacred space allows humility to grow within you. Humility protects your peace because it reminds you that you do not possess full understanding of another person's struggles or prayers. Many believers unintentionally sabotage their own progress by investing emotional energy into criticism. Criticism feels productive but rarely produces fruit. Jesus taught in Matthew 7:3 to remove the plank from your own eye before addressing the speck in another's eye. This teaching is not condemnation but invitation. It invites self-awareness. It calls believers toward inner transformation before outward correction. When your attention shifts inward, you begin noticing attitudes that need healing, thoughts that need renewal, and habits that require discipline. Minding your own business does not mean withdrawing love or compassion. Instead, it refines love into wisdom. Wise love encourages without controlling. Wise love supports without suffocating. Wise love prays rather than interferes. 1 Peter 4:8 reminds us that love covers a multitude of sins. Sometimes covering means refusing to expose another person's weaknesses through gossip or judgment. Silence becomes an expression of grace. There are individuals who fear focusing on themselves because they worry it may appear selfish. Yet Scripture consistently emphasizes stewardship. The parable of the talents in Matthew 25 reveals that each servant was judged according to what was entrusted to them personally. None were evaluated based on another servant's performance. The lesson is clear: responsibility is individual. Growth is personal. Accountability is direct. Consider how many dreams remain unrealized because people spend years observing rather than acting. They wait for ideal conditions or perfect validation while opportunities quietly pass. Proverbs 14:23 teaches that all hard work brings profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. When you mind your own business, you shift from discussion into action. You begin investing effort into personal development. Skills improve, character strengthens. Confidence grows naturally because it is built on progress rather than comparison. Emotionally, this journey requires courage because self-reflection can be uncomfortable. It forces you to confront fears you avoided while focusing on others. You may discover insecurities hidden beneath judgment. You may recognize wounds that shaped your reactions. Yet healing begins with honesty. Psalm 51:6 declares that truth is desired in the inward being. Transformation always begins within. Another beautiful outcome of focused living is gratitude. When your eyes stop measuring other lives, you begin appreciating your own blessings more deeply. Gratitude softens the heart. It replaces envy with joy. It reminds you that every small step forward is evidence of growth. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 encourages giving thanks in all circumstances. Gratitude shifts perspective from lack to abundance. There will be moments when others misunderstand your decision to step back from unnecessary involvement. Some may interpret silence as distance. Others may question your boundaries. Yet maturity requires accepting misunderstanding without abandoning conviction. Even Jesus often withdrew to solitary places to pray according to Luke 5:16. Withdrawal was not rejection of people but renewal of purpose. Solitude strengthens clarity. As you develop this discipline, your relationships begin to change. Conversations become more meaningful because they are no longer fueled by gossip. Interactions carry peace instead of competition. You listen more deeply. You speak more intentionally. People sense stability in your presence because you are no longer emotionally entangled in unnecessary drama. Many believers underestimate the spiritual warfare connected to distraction. The enemy rarely needs to destroy purpose directly if distraction can delay it indefinitely. Endless comparison, endless debate, endless interference slowly erode focus. Ephesians 6:11 encourages believers to stand firm against schemes. One of those schemes is misdirection. When you recognize this, you guard your attention carefully. Your mind is a garden. Whatever receives consistent attention grows stronger. If you continually focus on others' failures, negativity grows. If you focus on your calling, faith grows. Philippians 4:8 instructs believers to think about whatever is true, noble, right, pure, and admirable. Intentional thinking protects emotional health. Peace becomes sustainable when thoughts align with purpose. There is also a profound healing that occurs when you release the need to fix everyone. Many compassionate people carry hidden burdens, believing they must solve every problem around them. Yet even Moses learned delegation when overwhelmed by responsibility in Exodus 18. Wisdom recognizes limitations. You were never designed to carry every burden. Accepting this truth protects your mental and spiritual well-being. When attention returns fully to your own assignment, creativity begins awakening. Ideas that once felt distant suddenly appear clearer. Dreams long postponed begin stirring again. This is not coincidence. Purpose responds to focus. When energy is no longer divided, growth accelerates. Proverbs 16:3 teaches committing your work to the Lord establishes your plans. Commitment requires concentration. Sometimes minding your own business means forgiving people internally without demanding explanations. Forgiveness releases emotional entanglement. Holding resentment keeps you spiritually connected to situations that no longer serve your growth. See, Ephesians 4:31 encourages putting away bitterness and anger. Freedom often begins with emotional release. There is an emotional maturity that emerges when you accept that not every injustice requires your reaction. Some battles belong to divine justice rather than human intervention. Romans 12:19 reminds believers not to take revenge but leave room for God's justice. Trust replaces anxiety when you surrender control over outcomes beyond your responsibility. As days pass in focused living, you begin noticing subtle transformation. Your mornings feel lighter because your mind is not crowded with unnecessary concerns. Your prayers feel deeper because they arise from sincerity rather than distraction. Your work gains excellence because attention is fully present. Colossians 3:23 teaches working heartily as unto the Lord. Excellence flows from focus. There will still be challenges. Distractions will attempt to return. Opinions will invite reaction. Comparisons will whisper doubt. Yet each moment becomes an opportunity to choose alignment again. Spiritual discipline is not a single decision but a daily practice. Like a runner maintaining pace, you learn to return attention repeatedly to your purpose. Another important realization is that minding your own business protects joy. Joy fades when life becomes a constant evaluation of others. Joy flourishes when gratitude and purpose occupy the heart. Nehemiah 8:10 declares that the joy of the Lord is strength. Joy strengthens endurance during difficult seasons. Many believers long for influence, yet forget that influence grows from integrity developed privately. When you faithfully manage your own life, others naturally notice stability. Leadership begins with self-governance. Proverbs 25:28 compares a person without self-control to a city without walls. Boundaries create protection. Self-discipline builds authority. The emotional journey of focusing inward often brings moments of loneliness because you are no longer participating in conversations centered on negativity or gossip. Yet this loneliness is temporary. It creates space for deeper relationships built on authenticity rather than shared criticism. God often separates individuals from noise before elevating purpose. You may also discover that your sense of identity strengthens. Instead of defining yourself by comparison, you begin defining yourself by calling. identity rooted in purpose remains stable regardless of external success or failure. Jeremiah 1:5 speaks of being known and appointed before birth. That truth affirms intrinsic value independent of public recognition. There is also peace in accepting unfinished progress. Many people delay joy waiting for perfection. But Ecclesiastes 7:8 reminds us that the end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Growth unfolds gradually. Faithfulness matters more than speed. As your focus deepens, you become more sensitive to the guidance of the Spirit. Small impressions lead to wise decisions. Opportunities align naturally. Doors open without forced striving. Proverbs 3:5 instructs trusting with all your heart and not leaning on your own understanding. Trust becomes easier when distractions diminish. Emotionally, you begin experiencing compassion without comparison. You celebrate others sincerely because their success no longer threatens your identity. You encourage without jealousy. You pray without hidden competition. Romans 12:15 encourages rejoicing with those who rejoice. Genuine celebration becomes possible when your own purpose feels secure. You also learn the value of rest. Rest is not laziness but restoration. Many people burn out because they attempt to live multiple lives simultaneously. When you focus on your assignment, you recognize when rest is necessary to sustain longevity. Psalm 23 describes restoration of the soul. Rest renews vision. There will be seasons when progress seems invisible. During these moments, faith anchors perseverance. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Invisible growth often precedes visible breakthrough. Trusting this process protects motivation. Minding your own business gradually transforms your internal dialogue. Self-criticism softens into self-encouragement. Fear gives way to faith. Doubt becomes curiosity. You begin speaking life over your journey rather than comparing outcomes. Proverbs 18:21 reminds us that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Words shape internal reality. You start recognizing how precious time truly is. Time wasted in comparison or interference cannot be reclaimed. Psalm 90:12 teaches numbering our days to gain wisdom. Wisdom prioritizes purpose. Every day becomes an opportunity to invest intentionally rather than react emotionally. The deeper you walk in this discipline, the more you sense alignment between faith and daily living. Spirituality is no longer confined to moments of worship but expressed through focused stewardship. Ordinary tasks become sacred when performed with intentional faithfulness. And gradually your life begins reflecting quiet authority, the kind that does not demand attention yet commands respect, the kind that influences without force, because people sense authenticity and stability flowing from a heart anchored in purpose and peace and patience and humility. And as this transformation continues unfolding within you, there arises a deeper awareness that destiny is not discovered in dramatic moments alone, but shaped through daily obedience, daily focus, daily surrender, daily faithfulness. And you begin realizing that the greatest victories are often invisible victories over distraction, over comparison, over unnecessary involvement. And as you keep walking forward, guarding your attention, nurturing your calling, strengthening your faith, you find yourself becoming calmer, stronger, wiser, more compassionate, more grounded, more aligned, and more alive than ever before. And the journey continues, inviting you further into growth, further into clarity, further into responsibility, further into trust, as each new day offers another opportunity to choose focus again, to choose peace again, to choose peace again, to choose purpose again, to choose faithful stewardship of the life entrusted to you. And as that rhythm of intentional living continues to settle into your spirit, you begin noticing that clarity changes the way you respond to challenges. Problems that once overwhelmed you no longer carry the same emotional weight because your energy is no longer scattered across unnecessary concerns. When attention is disciplined, the soul becomes resilient. You realize that many struggles were intensified not by difficulty itself, but by divided focus. A focused heart carries strength because it is anchored in responsibility rather than reaction. Life begins to feel quieter inside even when circumstances remain busy outside. This inner quietness is not emptiness but stability. Sia. Isaiah 26:3 teaches that perfect peace belongs to those whose minds are stayed on the Lord because they trust. Peace grows where attention is steady. Trust deepens when distraction loses influence. You begin waking each morning with renewed intention, asking not what everyone else is doing, but what obedience looks like for you today. Many people live trapped in cycles of emotional exhaustion because they constantly react to events beyond their assignment. Every controversy becomes personal. Every disagreement becomes emotional. Every opinion feels urgent. Yet spiritual wisdom teaches discernment. Not everything deserves your reaction. Ecclesiastes 3:7 speaks of a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Maturity lies in knowing the difference. When you truly mind your own business, you develop emotional discipline. Discipline does not suppress feelings but directs them wisely. Anger becomes patience. Anxiety becomes prayer. Frustration becomes growth. Philippians 4:6 encourages believers to present requests through prayer rather than worry. Prayer redirects emotional energy toward transformation instead of turmoil. You also begin understanding that purpose requires emotional boundaries. Without boundaries, compassion becomes exhaustion. Some people carry guilt when they step back from unnecessary involvement. They fear appearing uncaring. Yet even shepherds guide without carrying every sheep on their shoulders. Leadership requires sustainability. When your spirit remains healthy, your ability to serve others increases. There is a sacred dignity in tending your own life faithfully. Simple routines become powerful acts of stewardship. Waking early to pray, working diligently, learning consistently, resting intentionally. These practices may appear ordinary, yet they shape extraordinary character over time. Luke 16:10 reminds us that faithfulness in little things prepares us for greater responsibility. Great destiny often grows from small, disciplined habits, repeated daily. As your focus strengthens, you become less vulnerable to comparison-driven discouragement. Social comparison loses power when identity is rooted internally. You no longer measure progress by visibility, but by obedience. Some seasons produce visible results while others cultivate invisible foundations. Both seasons are essential. Roots must deepen before branches expand. Emotionally, this shift brings relief. You stop pressuring yourself to match timelines created by society. You accept that growth unfolds uniquely. Psalm 37:23 declares that the steps of a righteous person are ordered. Ordered steps imply intentional progression rather than chaotic movement. Trusting this order removes unnecessary urgency. Another transformation occurs in how you perceive success. Success becomes alignment rather than applause. You begin asking whether your actions reflect purpose rather than whether they attract recognition. This mindset protects humility. Proverbs 22:4 teaches that humility and reverence lead to riches, honor, and life. Humility anchors success so that achievement does not replace character. Minding your own business also cultivates emotional intelligence. You learn to observe without judging. You listen without preparing responses. You understand that every person carries unseen struggles. Compassion grows deeper because it is no longer mixed with comparison. Romans 15:1 encourages bearing with the weaknesses of others without pleasing ourselves. True compassion respects boundaries while offering grace. You may notice that your conversations change. Words become fewer yet more meaningful. You speak purposefully rather than impulsively. Proverbs 10:19 reminds us that where words are many, sin is not absent, but the wise hold their tongues. Silence becomes strength rather than weakness. Thoughtful speech builds trust. There are moments when focusing inward reveals areas requiring repentance or adjustment. Instead of feeling shame, you experience renewal. 1 John 1:9 assures forgiveness and cleansing when we confess. Self-reflection becomes an act of spiritual growth rather than self-condemnation. Each correction strengthens alignment with purpose. The more you guard your attention, the more sensitive you become to spiritual guidance. Small convictions lead to wise decisions. You sense when to move forward and when to wait. Proverbs 16:9 teaches that humans plan their way, but the Lord directs their steps. Direction becomes clearer when distractions decrease. Many people chase influence without realizing that influence flows naturally from consistency. When others observe stability over time, they begin trusting your voice. Leadership emerges quietly from integrity. You do not need to announce authority because character reveals it. Matthew 5:16 encourages letting light shine through good works. Light shines effortlessly when purpose guides actions. Emotionally, you experience greater contentment. Contentment does not eliminate ambition but purifies it. Ambition becomes driven by calling rather than competition. 1 Timothy 6:6 teaches that godliness with contentment is great gain. Contentment protects joy during both progress and delay. You also learn patience with other people's journeys. When you stop interfering, you allow others the dignity of growth. Mistakes become teachers rather than opportunities for judgment. Galatians 6:1 encourages restoring others gently. Gentle restoration respects personal responsibility while offering encouragement. There is a profound peace in realizing that you do not need to attend every argument, defend every misunderstanding, or correct every opinion. Proverbs 26:4 advises not answering fools according to their folly, lest you become like them. Wisdom discerns when silence preserves dignity. Energy saved from unnecessary conflict strengthens purpose. As days turn into months, you notice emotional stability increasing. Situations that once triggered anxiety now invite reflection. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting instantly. James 1:19 teaches being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Emotional maturity grows through disciplined responses. Another beautiful outcome appears in creativity. When mental space clears, inspiration flows. Ideas arise during quiet moments. Vision expands. Purpose often communicates through stillness. Habakkuk waited watchfully for vision and clarity emerged. Waiting becomes productive rather than passive. You also begin valuing solitude differently. Solitude no longer feels lonely but restorative. Psalm 62:1 declares that the soul finds rest in God alone. Restful solitude strengthens identity independent of external affirmation. You become comfortable with yourself because you are aligned internally. Minding your own business transforms how you handle criticism. Instead of defending every accusation, you evaluate calmly whether correction is needed. Constructive feedback becomes growth rather than threat. Proverbs 15:31 teaches that whoever listens to life-giving correction will dwell among the wise. Wisdom welcomes refinement. Emotionally, you discover courage to pursue dreams previously delayed by fear of judgment. Fear loses power when attention centers on obedience rather than approval. Joshua 1:9 calls believers to be strong and courageous. Courage grows through focused action repeated consistently. You begin noticing divine provision appearing unexpectedly. Opportunities align. Resources emerge. Relationships strengthen. Matthew 6:33 promises that seeking first the kingdom brings provision. Focused pursuit of purpose aligns life with provision rather than anxiety. There will still be moments of doubt. Human emotions remain real. Yet doubt no longer controls direction. Faith anchors movement even when certainty feels incomplete. Hebrews 12:2 encourages fixing eyes on faith rather than circumstances. Focus protects perseverance. Minding your own business also deepens. Gratitude for simple moments. Conversations become more present. Meals become more meaningful. Daily routines feel purposeful. Gratitude transforms ordinary life into sacred experience. Psalm 118:24 reminds us to rejoice in each day given. As your heart continues growing, you recognize that peace attracts others seeking stability. People may come asking for guidance because they sense calmness within you. Ironically, the less you interfere, the more your presence influences. Influence rooted in authenticity carries lasting impact. You also realize that purpose requires continual learning. Growth never ends. Proverbs 1:5 teaches that the wise listen and add to their learning. Humility keeps the heart teachable. Curiosity replaces pride. Every experience becomes an opportunity for development. Emotionally, your confidence becomes quieter yet stronger. You no longer need to compare achievements. You celebrate progress privately. Confidence rooted in purpose does not require applause. It rests securely within identity. There are seasons when progress appears slow and patience feels difficult. During these moments, faith reminds you that unseen preparation precedes visible advancement. Isaiah 40:31 again speaks of renewed strength through waiting. Waiting becomes an active trust rather than passive frustration. You begin recognizing patterns of distraction earlier and redirect attention quickly. Awareness strengthens discipline. Spiritual growth becomes practical daily living rather than abstract belief. Every decision becomes an opportunity to choose focus. Minding your own business gradually reshapes your priorities. You invest more in relationships that encourage growth and less in environments filled with negativity. 1 Corinthians 15:33 warns that bad company corrupts good character. Wise choices protect spiritual health. Emotionally, forgiveness becomes easier because you no longer carry unnecessary involvement in conflicts. Forgiveness frees emotional space for peace. Colossians 3:13 encourages forgiving as the Lord forgave. Release replaces resentment. You also learn to celebrate small victories, completing tasks faithfully, maintaining discipline, showing kindness quietly. These moments accumulate into meaningful transformation. Zechariah 4:10 reminds us not to despise small beginnings. Small steps build lasting change. As clarity deepens, you notice increased resilience during adversity. Challenges still arise, but they no longer define identity. Romans 5:3 teaches that suffering produces perseverance, character, and hope. Purpose transforms hardship into preparation. Your inner dialogue becomes kinder. Instead of constant self-criticism, you begin encouraging yourself with truth. Psalm 42 shows the psalmist speaking hope to his own soul. Self-encouragement strengthens emotional health. There is also renewed appreciation for community rooted in mutual growth rather than comparison. Healthy relationships support purpose without competition. Hebrews 10:24 encourages believers to spur one another toward love and good works. Community thrives when individuals respect boundaries. You begin understanding that minding your own business is ultimately an act of faith. It requires trusting that others are guided by their own journeys and trusting that your path is sufficient. Faith replaces control. Peace replaces anxiety. The longer you walk in this discipline, the more natural it becomes. Focus transforms from effort into lifestyle. Purpose becomes integrated into daily existence. Each action aligns with intention. Each decision reflects clarity. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become the person you once prayed to become, a person grounded in peace, guided by purpose, strengthened by faith, and freed from the exhausting need to monitor every life around you. And this freedom allows your spirit to breathe deeply again, allowing creativity to rise, allowing joy to return, allowing hope to expand. And as you continue walking faithfully, guarding your attention, nurturing your calling, embracing patience, trusting divine timing, you sense that life itself is unfolding with greater meaning, greater depth, greater awareness, and every step forward becomes an invitation to continue growing, continue learning, continue trusting, continue focusing on the sacred responsibility entrusted uniquely to you, while the journey keeps moving forward, shaping your heart, shaping your mind, shaping your character, preparing you for moments still ahead, moments that will require even deeper focus, even greater faith, even stronger discipline, as the path of purpose continues unfolding before you day by day, step by step, breath by breath. And as that steady walk continues, you begin recognizing that purpose is not something you occasionally visit, but something you live inside every moment. Your awareness changes. You start seeing decisions through the lens of stewardship rather than emotion. Every hour becomes valuable. Every conversation carries weight. Every reaction becomes a choice between distraction and alignment. There was a time when your mood depended on circumstances around you. When others succeeded, you felt uncertain. When others struggled, you felt pulled into their storms. But now you are learning emotional sovereignty. Proverbs 4:23 teaches to guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. Guarding your heart means protecting your attention from unnecessary burdens. It means refusing to allow external chaos to dictate internal peace. You begin noticing how easily people lose direction because they constantly respond instead of reflect. Reaction is immediate, but reflection produces wisdom. Ecclesiastes 7:9 warns against being quickly provoked because anger resides in foolishness. Reflection slows the soul. It creates space for understanding. When you pause before reacting, you reclaim authority over your life. Minding your own business teaches patience and unseen growth. Seeds planted today do not produce harvest tomorrow. Farmers understand this truth deeply. Galatians 6:9 encourages believers not to grow weary in doing good, because harvest arrives in due season. Due season requires trust. Trust requires patience. Patience strengthens faith. There is an emotional healing that begins when you stop measuring yourself against other journeys. Comparison often hides insecurity. When comparison fades, gratitude emerges. You realize that your life has unique timing, unique lessons, unique responsibilities. Psalm 139 speaks of days written before one came to be. That realization removes anxiety about falling behind. As your focus sharpens, you become aware of how powerful attention truly is. Attention determines growth. Whatever you consistently think about shapes your character. Romans 12:2 teaches transformation through renewing the mind. Renewal happens gradually through intentional focus. Thoughts become habits. Habits become lifestyle. Lifestyle becomes destiny. You also begin recognizing that many conflicts disappear when you refuse unnecessary involvement. Silence dissolves arguments that attention would have fueled. Proverbs 17:27 reminds us that those with knowledge use words with restraint. Restraint becomes strength. Emotional maturity appears in calm responses rather than loud reactions. Another change occurs in your spiritual life. Prayer becomes less about requesting change in others and more about transformation within yourself. You begin praying for wisdom, discipline, patience, clarity, and courage. James 1:5 promises wisdom generously to those who ask. Wisdom grows when prayer aligns with responsibility. You discover that peace is not absence of problems but presence of direction. Direction stabilizes the heart even during uncertainty. When you know your assignment, distractions lose attraction. You no longer chase every opportunity because you understand that not every open door belongs to you. Discernment protects purpose. Emotionally, you feel lighter because you are longer carrying expectations placed on you by society or comparison. Expectations once felt like chains pulling you away from authenticity. Now you live with intentional honesty. You acknowledge strengths without pride and weaknesses without shame. 2 Corinthians 12:9 reminds that strength is perfected in weakness. Acceptance produces growth. Minding your own business also strengthens resilience against criticism. When identity is rooted in purpose, criticism becomes information rather than destruction. Some words may guide improvement while others lose power because they do not align with truth. Proverbs 29:25 warns that fear of people becomes a trap, but trust brings safety. Trusting purpose frees you from constant approval seeking. There is beauty in discovering how ordinary faithfulness creates extraordinary outcomes. Daily discipline in unseen moments prepares you for visible responsibility. David learned courage while tending sheep long before facing giants. Preparation often occurs quietly. God develops character before elevating position. Your relationships also begin transforming because you engage from wholeness rather than neediness. You no longer seek validation through constant involvement. Instead, you offer presence grounded in peace. Healthy relationships thrive when individuals bring stability rather than dependence. You learn to celebrate solitude as sacred preparation. In quiet moments, thoughts settle and direction becomes clear. Elijah heard divine guidance not in wind or earthquake, but in gentle whisper. Stillness reveals what noise conceals. Solitude strengthens spiritual sensitivity. As you grow, you realize that purpose demands sacrifice. Some habits must end. Some conversations must change. Some environments must be left behind. Hebrews 12:1 encourages laying aside every weight that hinders progress. Growth requires letting go of what once felt comfortable, but now limits destiny. Emotionally, this process can feel uncomfortable because change challenges familiarity. Yet discomfort often signals expansion. Muscles strengthen through resistance. Faith strengthens through challenge. James 1:3 teaches that testing develops perseverance. Perseverance shapes maturity. You begin noticing that time becomes more intentional. Idle distraction loses appeal. You value learning, reflection, prayer, work, rest, and meaningful connection. Ephesians 5:15 urges believers to live wisely, making the most of time. Wisdom honors time as sacred resource. Minding your own business gradually cultivates deep humility. You recognize how much remains to learn. Humility opens the heart to growth. Proverbs 11:2 teaches that wisdom accompanies humility. Pride closes doors while humility invites transformation. Another emotional breakthrough arrives when you release responsibility for outcomes beyond your control. You focus on effort, obedience, and integrity while trusting results to God. This shift removes anxiety. Matthew 6 speaks of not worrying about tomorrow because each day has enough concern of its own. Trust simplifies life. You also develop compassion without interference. You support others through encouragement, prayer, and kindness rather than control. Love matures into respect for individual journeys. Romans 14 reminds believers not to judge another's servant because each stands before their own master. Respect protects unity. Your confidence becomes rooted in consistency rather than success. Even during setbacks, you remain grounded because identity no longer depends on results. Psalm 46:10 encourages stillness and recognition of divine sovereignty. Stillness anchors courage. You may notice an increasing awareness of gratitude. Gratitude transforms perception. Challenges become lessons. Delays become preparation. Closed doors become redirection. Gratitude softens disappointment and strengthens hope. Colossians 3:15 encourages thankfulness as guiding attitude. There will be seasons where progress feels hidden. During these times, faith sustains perseverance. Noah built an ark long before rain appeared. Obedience sometimes precedes visible evidence. Faith moves forward even without applause. Minding your own business also reshapes how you respond to success. Success no longer inflates ego because you recognize it as stewardship rather than ownership. Luke 12:48 teaches that greater responsibility accompanies greater blessing. Success becomes opportunity to serve faithfully. Emotionally, you experience increasing freedom from envy. Envy disappears when purpose feels secure. You genuinely celebrate others without comparison because you understand that destiny is not competition but calling. Romans 12:10 encourages honoring others sincerely. You begin noticing that peace attracts opportunities aligned with purpose. Calmness allows clearer thinking. Decisions improve. Relationships deepen. Proverbs 3:6 promises direction when acknowledging God in all ways. Alignment produces guidance. There is also courage growing quietly within you. Courage does not always appear dramatic. Sometimes courage is simply continuing daily discipline despite fatigue or doubt. Courage chooses faithfulness repeatedly. You learn that setbacks do not cancel destiny. Failure becomes teacher rather than identity. Proverbs 24:16 reminds that the righteous may fall yet rise again. Resilience becomes defining characteristic of purposeful living. Minding your own business teaches emotional independence balanced with spiritual dependence. You no longer rely on constant affirmation from others yet remain connected to divine guidance. This balance creates stability. You also become more attentive to your thoughts because thoughts influence emotions and actions. Philippians 4:8 again encourages focusing on what is true, honorable, and pure. Thought discipline protects peace. And now, as every lesson settles into the depth of your heart, there comes a moment of sacred realization, a moment where everything spoken before begins to gather into one powerful truth. You were never created to live distracted, confused, or entangled in the weight of other people's assignments. You were created with intention. You were formed with purpose. You are entrusted with a life that carries divine meaning far beyond comparison, competition, or unnecessary involvement in matters never assigned to you. There is something deeply liberating about reaching the place where your soul finally exhales. For many years you may have carried burdens that were never yours. You tried to manage opinions, you tried to correct situations, you tried to fix people, you tried to live multiple lives at once, and somewhere along the journey your own calling became faint beneath the noise. But now understanding has returned. Awareness has awakened. You recognize that peace begins when responsibility becomes clear. Life changes when you accept that your greatest contribution to the world is becoming who you were created to be. Not louder than others, not more visible than others, not more approved than others, but faithful. Faithful to your calling, faithful to your growth, faithful to the work placed in your hands. Ecclesiastes teaches that there is a time for every purpose under heaven, and when you truly understand this truth, you stop rushing into seasons that do not belong to you. You stop envying another person's harvest because you understand they may have planted seeds long before you ever saw the fruit. You stop judging another person's struggle because you realize you cannot see the full story of their preparation, and suddenly life becomes lighter. You begin waking each morning not asking what everyone else expects, but asking what obedience requires today. You move through your day with intention. Conversations become meaningful. Actions become purposeful. Decisions become aligned with destiny rather than emotion. This is where maturity begins. Maturity is not measured by age, but by focus. It is revealed when a person learns to govern their attention. The greatest battles in life are rarely external. They happen within the mind. Distraction fights for your time. Comparison fights for your confidence. Fear fights for your courage. Yet Scripture reminds us in 2 Timothy that we were not given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind. A sound mind knows where to stand and where to step back. A sound mind understands that not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every conflict deserves response. Not every voice deserves authority over your direction. When you mind your own business, you reclaim ownership of your life. You step into stewardship. You begin treating your time, your energy, your gifts, and your relationships as sacred trust rather than disposable resources. And something beautiful happens. Your faith becomes practical. Faith is no longer limited to moments of worship or prayer alone. Faith becomes visible in discipline. Faith becomes visible in consistency. Faith becomes visible when you continue doing what is right even when nobody notices. Colossians reminds us to work heartily as unto the Lord and not unto people. That scripture carries profound freedom because it releases you from the exhausting pursuit of human approval. When your work becomes worship, you no longer depend on applause to remain motivated. You become steady, and steadiness is powerful. The world is filled with people who start passionately but quit quickly. Yet the person who learns to focus quietly outlasts noise. Like a tree planted by streams of water described in Psalm 1, your roots grow deeper than circumstances. Storms may come, but stability remains because your foundation is no longer external recognition but internal alignment. You discover that purpose is not something you chase endlessly. Purpose is something you cultivate daily. Every disciplined choice becomes a seed. Every act of patience becomes preparation. Every moment of restraint becomes strength. You may not always see immediate results, but transformation is taking place beneath the surface. Just as seeds grow unseen beneath soil, your character develops in hidden seasons. And hidden growth is never wasted. Many people desire greatness without embracing responsibility. Yet true greatness begins with self-governance. Proverbs teaches that a person who rules their spirit is stronger than one who conquers a city. Mastery over self is the highest victory. You begin noticing how different life feels when emotional reactions no longer control decisions. Peace replaces impulsiveness. Wisdom replaces urgency. Discernment replaces confusion. You become slower to judge, quicker to forgive, more patient with process. Because you understand that everyone is walking a journey known fully only by God. This understanding produces compassion without interference. You love people without trying to control them. You support without suffocating. You encourage without comparing. Your presence becomes safe because it carries peace rather than pressure. And this is where influence begins. Influence does not come from forcing authority. It flows naturally from authenticity. When people observe consistency, humility, and calm strength, they become curious. They notice stability in a chaotic world. Your life itself becomes testimony. Not because you tried to impress anyone, but because you finally focused on becoming whole. The greatest witness of faith is not perfection but transformation. Transformation happens when a person chooses growth daily even when progress feels slow. Romans reminds us that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. Hope grows strongest in those who remain faithful through unseen seasons. There will always be moments when distraction attempts to return. Old habits will whisper. Comparison may try to regain influence. But now you recognize the difference. You know the cost of divided attention. You know how precious peace truly is, and so you protect it. You guard your thoughts carefully. You choose conversations wisely. You invest energy intentionally. You begin understanding that boundaries are not walls against people, but bridges toward purpose. Jesus often withdrew to quiet places not because people were unimportant, but because clarity required solitude. Even the strongest servants need moments of renewal. Rest becomes holy when it restores alignment. You learn that saying no to distraction is actually saying yes to destiny. And destiny requires courage. Courage to remain faithful when results are delayed. Courage to walk alone when necessary. Courage to continue growing when comfort invites stagnation. Joshua was told repeatedly to be strong and courageous because purpose often demands movement before certainty appears. Faith walks forward, trusting guidance even when the full path is unseen. This is where many believers discover deep spiritual freedom. They stop living reactively and begin living intentionally. Life becomes less about managing outcomes and more about practicing obedience. You begin trusting divine timing. You understand that delays are not denial. Preparation is taking place. Character is being refined. Wisdom is developing quietly within you. Isaiah declares that those who wait upon the Lord renew their strength. Waiting is not inactivity. Waiting is alignment. Waiting is trust in motion. As alignment deepens, gratitude expands. You notice blessings once overlooked. Small victories feel meaningful. Ordinary moments become sacred. Gratitude transforms perspective until joy no longer depends on circumstances. Joy becomes internal. And internal joy cannot be stolen by comparison or criticism. You become emotionally free. Free from needing validation. Free from carrying unnecessary burdens. Free from constant anxiety about other people's journeys. Freedom allows creativity to flourish. Ideas return. Vision expands. Dreams once buried beneath distraction begin breathing again. You remember desires placed in your heart long ago. Not ambitions rooted in pride, but callings rooted in service. You begin pursuing them patiently, faithfully, confidently, because now you understand that purpose is not competition. Destiny is not limited resource. Another person's success does not diminish your opportunity. Each life carries unique assignment. Jeremiah speaks of plans for hope and future, and those plans are personal. No one else can fulfill what was entrusted to you. When you fully accept this truth, comparison loses power forever. Peace becomes your companion, and peace transforms how you move through the world. You listen more deeply. You respond more thoughtfully. You live more intentionally. Even challenges begin appearing differently. Instead of asking why difficulties exist, you ask what they are teaching. Trials become classrooms rather than obstacles. Faith grows stronger through understanding. James teaches that perseverance must finish its work so that believers become mature and complete, lacking nothing. Maturity arrives when you stop escaping growth and start embracing it. You realize that minding your own business was never about isolation. It was about alignment. Alignment with purpose. Alignment with identity. Alignment with faith. And as alignment strengthens, something remarkable happens. Your life begins producing fruit naturally. Peace becomes visible. Patience becomes evident. Kindness becomes effortless. Self-control becomes strong. The fruit described in Galatians grows quietly but powerfully within a focused life. You become a person who brings calm into chaos. Others feel encouraged simply by being around you. Your words carry weight because they emerge from reflection rather than reaction. This is spiritual authority, not dominance, not loudness, not control, but quiet. Confidence born from obedience. And perhaps the most beautiful transformation is this: you begin loving your own journey. You no longer wish to exchange lives with anyone else. You appreciate the lessons, the growth, the timing, the process that shaped you into who you are becoming. You understand now that every experience carried purpose, even the painful ones. Romans reminds us that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to purpose. Nothing was wasted. Every disappointment refined you. Every delay strengthened patience. Every struggle deepened faith. You stand now with renewed clarity, realizing that your life is not random but intentional. And from this realization emerges responsibility. You choose daily to walk wisely. You choose daily to guard your focus. You choose daily to nurture your calling. You no longer allow distraction to steal destiny. Because you understand something profound: the world does not need another person busy with everyone else's life. The world needs individuals who fully embrace their own purpose. When each person fulfills their assignment, harmony is created. Communities grow stronger. Families become healthier. Leadership becomes wiser. Transformation begins with one focused life: your life. And so as this journey continues, you walk forward carrying lessons learned not as heavy burdens but as guiding lights. You know there will still be challenges, yet fear no longer dominates because purpose provides direction. You have learned to be still and know. You have learned to trust beyond sight. You have learned to walk faithfully without comparison. And as you step into tomorrow, you do so with renewed awareness that every breath is opportunity, every moment is stewardship, every decision shapes legacy. Your story is still unfolding. Your calling is still expanding. Your growth is still continuing. You move forward grounded in faith, strengthened by discipline, guided by wisdom, and surrounded by peace, knowing that the greatest transformation was never outside you but within you. And as life continues unfolding, you remain committed to the sacred responsibility entrusted uniquely to you, living intentionally, loving, deeply serving, faithfully growing, continually guarding your heart, protecting your focus, embracing purpose, walking humbly, trusting completely, allowing every step, every season, every experience to shape you into the person you were always meant to become, a person aligned with destiny, anchored in faith, filled with peace, and prepared to walk forward with unwavering clarity, courage, and purpose for all the days still ahead.